North Carolina is still in need of that Armando Bacot replacement in the paint, and it might just come in the form of one of the Tar Heels' opponents from last season.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you've joined us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there, as well as all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community. Thanks to all of you for making us your first listen or watch of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Coming up on the show today, we are going to continue looking around at the landscape of who Carolina might land in a big man to replace Armando Bacot. We've mentioned several along the way, and today we're going to look at Mr. Jonas Aidoo out of Tennessee. Also, I've got some Cade Tyson news for you, the sharpshooter that I think is Carolina's most important portal land right now, and then a few other just random things for you coming up today. So let's start in the paint with the big man search. Here's something important that I need to say off the bat. I've said this multiple times, and Carolina's coaching staff's movement in the transfer portal continues to confirm my belief. And that belief is this: it is clear and obvious that Carolina is not content with just Jalen Washington as their main post, or just Jalen Washington and incoming freshman James Brown. It is clear that whether it's somebody who's an absolute dude that Jalen Washington would essentially be a backup to, similar to his role with Armando Bacot last year, or bringing in somebody in more of a timeshare or a platoon like you might see in left field in a baseball game or something like that, the coaching staff clearly is looking for somebody else in the post. Because also I want to remind you that it's not just about Armando Bacot being out the door, but also James Okonkwo. Those are your two biggest bodied centers from last season, not on this roster anymore. So Carolina needs some help in the front court. So we do know a couple of the names that were either targets or potential targets are now off the board. Maxime Raynaud from Stanford, whom was, I believe, the first player that I did a potential portal thing on for this season, has ultimately decided to stay at Stanford. And then the other one, and this news came through on Monday, is Aaron Bradshaw, who had been at Kentucky last year, had dealt with early season injuries, came back, and was just never fully able to assimilate himself. We see this happen a lot with freshmen who get injured either preseason, like in the summer, in the offseason, or in the preseason lead up to the season, that freshmen just aren't able to find their way because there's nothing to build on. And so for Bradshaw, I just thought it was kind of an unfair shake for him this season, and I think he will be much better next season, assuming he can get healthy. But it's a moot point for the Tar Heels because he has committed to Ohio State after being there this weekend. And it's interesting because I think the Bradshaw scenario to me is a healthy reminder of what this time period is, the transfer portal. It is, for those who are interested in it, it's fun and electric, but it changes like the weather in Miami, Florida, right? It could be sunny 1 second and pouring rain 5 minutes later. And the same is true in the transfer portal. As soon as you learn a name, they might be gone and out the door because there's a better offer down the road. There's more playing time elsewhere. There's more, whatever it is. Or on the flip side of that, there could be a player who is like, oh, I've just heard of this guy. Oh, he's committed. Cool, right? Like the transfer portal can go both ways with that. And Bradshaw to me is a great example of that because it felt over this weekend this past weekend that he was trending in a very Carolina direction, and that might end up being who Carolina ultimately had as their next big. But he's going to Ohio State. He's going to be a Buckeye. So it's a reminder of how I like to put it, how microwave versus crock pot, the transfer portal commitment cycle can be, and how quickly these relationships are in and out of your life. So Aaron Bradshaw, good luck at Ohio State, but both he and Maxime Raynaud are now off the board. So the question then is, okay, who's left? Who's Carolina still looking at in terms of replacing Armando Bacot? We've talked about Oumar Ballo from Arizona as a possibility for that. I've mentioned this player. Coach Pat Kilby and I talked about him some on Friday's show, although I haven't done one of like my primers on him. We might do that later this week. Is Rutgers player Cliff Omoruyi, who is in the portal, another big-bodied guy, and another that we've heard. And these are all specific contacts that we've heard of that Carolina has made, whether that's coming from 247 Sports or on 3 or from inside Carolina, wherever it is. These are all guys we know that Carolina has had some level of contact with, and we just wait to see if there's more. So Ballo and Omoruyi are both kind of those big-bodied guys in the Armando Bacot mold. The other that I'll mention right now, Danny Wolf, I'll call him the lone wolf because he's the lone, more like less bruiser big and more skilled movement big, is what Danny Wolf would be if Coach Davis ultimately pursues him to lock him down as the Armando Bacot replacement. And so he's the lone wolf body type, but kind of now in the mix, and we haven't really talked about these guys yet. On Friday for that show, I mentioned just very briefly in passing Tennessee's Jonas Aidoo, who had just entered the transfer portal on Thursday. At the time of the recording, I didn't know if Carolina would reach out or had reached out. Over the weekend, though, we learned that they certainly have. And so today, I want to introduce him into the big man mix as well. Another name I'll mention, but I just want to mention it, and we're not going to talk about him because there's been no official word of Carolina contact, and so there's not reason to yet. I know that sometimes I'll say, hey, this is a player, the type of player I would like. And so I might do a primer on somebody just for that regard of like, hey, I think this dude would fit Carolina's system. But with this player, I'm just going to mention his name and we'll move on today. And if he comes up as an actual person that Carolina's talked to, we'll go more in on it. But that's Andrew Carr, whom Tar Heels fans will be familiar with from Wake Forest, a big from them. And so, but I'm just going to leave that where it is right now and we'll move on. So in terms of who's left, now that Bradshaw is out to Ohio State and Raynaud is staying at Stanford, I see 4 big key names right now: Ballo, Omoruyi, Danny Wolf, and Jonas Aidoo from Tennessee. And I've gotten this question a lot. So Isaac, clearly if the coaching staff is looking at these bigs and like of a different breed than would be like Okonkwo last year, right? Clearly, well, all due respect to James Okonkwo, clearly everyone knew the deal there. Armando Bacot's the guy, Jalen Washington's the guy behind the guy, and Okonkwo is insurance behind all of that. This year, again, it's different. You're looking for somebody to be the dude, or at least in a partnership as the dudes alongside Jalen Washington. But the question I keep getting asked is, Isaac, are we out on Jalen Washington as the starting 5? I would say that Carolina is still looking for the guy that is their starting center. However, I think we got to wait and see how Jalen Washington's offseason goes, because he's shown great spurts of efficiency in his limited minutes. Can he sustain that with more minutes? Against bigger, able-bodied guys, will Jalen Washington be able to hold his ground? I don't know. He's got to put on some weight and some muscle to be able to do that. So I think that's part of it, is you can't necessarily say if Jay Wash is your guy or not, because you got to wait to see what he is heading into next season. But I think for right now, you got to go all in on getting one of these 4 guys, or maybe somebody else that comes into the portal that we don't know about yet, But I would feel great with any of them. They bring different things to the table, but any of those for Ballo, Omoruyi, Wolf, or Aidoo that Carolina can get, I'm all in on it. So, as I said today, though, we want to focus on Jonas Aidoo and what he might bring to the Tar Heels and why it makes sense. We're going to have that conversation in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball's finally in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every one of those sports. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Why don't we look ahead to 2025 national championship odds for basketball? Duke leads the way at plus 1,100, followed by Kansas at plus 1,200, UConn at plus 1,300, and then Carolina, Bama, and Houston all at plus 1,600. So, folks, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This episode is also brought to you by our brand new sponsor, Monopoly Go. Now, look, gang, here's the deal. I've been told that I'm a pretty competitive person, and I got to admit it. Let's be honest, it's true. I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big old fan of Monopoly Go. I remember growing up playing Monopoly all the time. I remember playing the McDonald's Monopoly game on the cup, all that stuff. I'm all in on Monopoly, man. I think it's so fun. So I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, Monopoly Go. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. Just call me Scrooge McDuck on that one. And the leaderboards show me who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon of all. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people from all over the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Let's talk Tennessee transfer Jonas Aidoo here on today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. The big man from the interior for Tennessee this past year. Last Thursday, he announced that he was entering the transfer portal, but also did declare for the NBA draft for 2024. So what that means for Aidoo is that if Carolina wants him, more than likely, they would have to wait for him to go through the draft process and learn everything he wants to learn. If he gets a combine invite, which we wait to see the names that come out of that, I would expect he would get one. Because just of where he's ranked and his productivity. But ultimately, I expect him to not stay in this year's draft. I truly do think he will pull out. Obviously, you never know till it actually happens, but that's where I'm at. And we'll see if Carolina is willing to wait on that while other guys might go off the board. That's just something to keep an eye on. Aidoo has 1 year of eligibility. He played, and he is part of the first class that does not have COVID eligibility. And so he's just 1 year behind that. But that means just one more year of college basketball remaining. Last season for Tennessee and Rick Barnes, 11.4 points. He was third on the team behind Dalton Knecht and Zakai Ziegler. Had 7.3 rebounds a game. That led the Vols. Had 66 blocks. That was third in the SEC all of last season. Played an average of 24.9 minutes a game. He was 53% from two. Really not much of a three-point shooter. Was 3 of 15 from three last year, so doesn't get there very often. And then from the free throw line, isn't great. Interestingly, he's gone down each year. Was 82.4% his freshman year, 75% last year, and 62.6% this most recent year in his most attempts by far that he's had in college. So you'd obviously like to see that number go up. Now, one thing to me that is really interesting with Aidoo is that he is a native of Durham, North Carolina. And Coach Roy Williams recruited Aidoo to come to North Carolina, and that just kind of fell apart in the changeover of staffs as Coach Williams retired and Coach Davis came in. But I mean, he loves home. I saw just a Tennessee basketball video clip where some of the players were sitting around chatting, and he was asked, "What was your favorite moment of this past basketball season?" Meaning the one we just completed. And he said, without hesitation, he says, quote, "For me, I got to be biased, going back to UNC for sure," end quote. And so clearly this is a dude that loves the state of North Carolina, that's all in on the Tar Heels. And I think there's something to that when a guy's looking to transfer and come back home. You know, I listened to several of the Tennessee commentators talk about it, and I disagreed with a lot of them who said, look, he had this bad performance against Edie, which he did, Jonas Aidoo. And so he's running. He's soft and he's running. I don't buy that, man. I think it's an opportunity to go elsewhere, maybe playing a little bit more of an offensive system where he could be utilized a little more. Like, hello, Carolina, what's up? I wouldn't be surprised if coming back home, back east, even further east than Knoxville, is a thing for him. I thought Eric Kane. I put McCain on there. I was thinking of Jared. Eric Kane from Locked On Vols, who does a phenomenal job covering Tennessee, by the way, just talked about like anyone who tries to sell you on Aidoo running or crying is just trying to sell you on something, and that's not it. Clearly, this is a massive loss for the Vols, and that's where I think things are. On last year's roster for Tennessee, Aidoo was 6'11", 240, so has great size, exactly what you would want. Was second team All ACC, was part of the All defensive team in the SEC, so essentially exactly what Armando did last year in terms of postseason accolades anyway. I really liked what Ross Martin, who, for those who have been around Carolina stuff for a while, wrote for Inside Carolina, said, quote, "He fits what UNC needs for a fast-paced, guard-oriented offense." And I like that. Like, that's the focus, is always on the guards and what they're able to do. That's what Carolina's looking for. Aidoo's great around the rim, 61% field goal percentage, and those shots around the rim accounted for 62% of all his field goal attempts last season. A couple strengths of Aidoo's: 8.8% block rate. That's really, really, really good. 13.3% offensive rebounding rate as well. Now, as I often say, I don't want to just blow up his strengths and not mention where he might need to grow. One of those is catch and shoot, where he's in the 22nd percentile in the entire nation. That's not good. So you'd like to see Aidoo grow in that. And also, you know, as I mentioned about Zach Edey, just in totality, Aidoo didn't have a good postseason this year. And, you know, I don't know if I'd call that troubling or just like, had this great year and then just kind of fell off in the postseason. You look at of Tennessee's 5 conference or 5 games in the postseason, 1 conference tournament game against Mississippi State, and then 4 NCAA tournament games, had 5 points, 15, 11, 4 points against Creighton, and 0 points against Zach Edey and Purdue. If that's who Carolina's going to go get, it's got to be better than that. It cannot fall down that far in what he's doing. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Again, I just always want to put both the positives and negatives in front of us. Back to a positive, something I like as compared to Armando is I think Aidoo is more of an above the rim player, a more high flyer than was Armando. Still, you know, a big, thick body, but it's just, comes off. He's always come off as being more athletic to me than Armando. So that's something to watch out for. The question, though, is he the guy? Of the 4 remaining in the portal, is he the guy you'll want if you're Carolina? Well, I've said it before. There's style. Somebody like Janai Broome from Auburn is who I really want. I would love that. I think he and what he does would just fit Carolina in a multitude of ways, but he's not in the transfer portal. And so you look at somebody like Aidoo, who's not really a shooter, but who does a lot of other good things well. And if this team gets Elliot, Cadeau back, and RJ Davis and Harrison Ingram, then to me, Aidoo would make a lot of sense, particularly if you can land a really, really sharp shooting small forward out on the wing. So if so, I'm A-okay with Aidoo. I like Ballo, but he's different than Ballo. Ballo's a little more dominant, just being around the paint, scoring high field goal percentage. I think would be like a more dominant player than Aidoo, but Aidoo would be the more athletic and nimble player, allowing Carolina to get out and run more. And so, you just got to look and see what's there and available. Speaking of a potential really, really good get on the wing, what is there never enough of in basketball currency? Shooting. Give me all the shooting you can get. For me, let's go get Cade Tyson. We'll talk about him again in just a second. Right after I tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Thankfully, LinkedIn isn't just some other job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open to just that perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit the other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Plus, on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses are able to get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire a professional like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Once again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. If you've been with us at all throughout this transfer portal season here on Locked On Tar Heels, you know that for me, Cade Tyson is the most important individual player for Carolina to focus on, the one I want more than any other. Part of that supply and demand. I think there are more big guys that I would feel comfortable with. Right now, it's Cade Tyson. That's the guy I want on the wing for Carolina next season. Now, Travis Branham of 247 Sports had reported leading into the weekend that Tyson was going to visit Knoxville in Tennessee this past weekend. Interestingly enough, as we just talked about Jonas Aidoo, and that he'll be coming to Carolina this upcoming weekend for a visit. Now, on Monday evening, there was a rumor floating around the internet, around Twitter, that Coach Davis and the staff had actually gone to Nashville, where Belmont is, where Cade Tyson would be transferring from, to meet with him in the wake of him meeting with Tennessee. That's one of those things where I'm going to say it to you, and I'm just going to say to you, I can't say with any certainty that did or didn't happen. And that's all we can go on sometimes in this cloak and dagger transfer portal. And part of that is Carolina keeps things really close to the vest. So there are people out there that will know the truth of that answer, and we'll find out. But as of now, we expect that Tyson will be in Chapel Hill this weekend for a visit. And that we can say with more certainty because it has been reported by a widely regarded reputable source in Travis Branham, right? And so other things like these guys going to Nashville, it's like maybe they did, but it's an interesting thing to talk about. So Tyson, most important player I care about in the portal for Carolina. There is a player that entered the transfer portal on Monday evening that I would like Carolina to go after if they don't get Cade Tyson. We're going to talk about him tonight, so I'm not even going to mention his name here on the Tuesday show, but we might talk about him on Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Need a drink of water. I apologize. Allergies, man, they're starting to get to me. The pollen's everywhere. It's killing me, y'all. Absolutely killing me. Anyway, Cade Tyson, I like where Carolina's at with it right now. Clearly, because of his shooting, there are a ton of schools after this young man, and I get it, and that's going to be the thing. but he's from the state of North Carolina, just like Jonas Aidoo. And so there's a lot that makes sense with it. Bring him home to the state. Now, I want to clear up two things about Cade Tyson that I saw on Twitter on Monday night. One of them said, quote, if UNC is interested in Cade Tyson, then Hubert Davis really does need to be fired. Don't put another Paxton Wojcik on that team, man, end quote. I get sick and tired of it. First off, can we just stop with the overblown fire this coach, fire that coach, he's the worst kind of takes? That ain't it. But secondly, I can also understand why someone might try to compare Paxton Wojcik to Cade Tyson. Both, coming not from the high major level, both coming in as shooters, guys with a reputation of being shooters at least. And with all due respect to Paxton Wojcik, that ain't Cade Tyson. To me, he projects as an infinitely better shooter. He's taller, longer, has a better shooting percentage, all of these kind of things. So due respect to Paxton, but that's not even close. The other thing I saw on Twitter that I want to clear up with the Cade Tyson side of things is someone else said, quote, I wonder if he, Tyson, would be cool with his bench role if Harrison Ingram returns, end quote. All right, let's fix this one too. Harrison Ingram, unless Coach Davis goes with a change, is the power forward, the 4 for Carolina. Cade Tyson would be the small forward, the 3. Now, obviously, again, let's remind ourselves that Coach Davis told Harrison Ingram he was recruiting him to be a small forward. So I can see a world in which you might think that, and maybe Jalen Withers or somebody else you look at as a starting for, Zayden High, if he has a big blow up this offseason. But for me, I'm not worried about Harrison Ingram coming back and getting Cade Tyson in. I want both of those things. Like if you're telling me your starting lineup could be some form of Elliot, Cadeau, RJ Davis, Cade Tyson, Harrison Ingram, and Jonas Aidoo or Oumar Ballo, give me that all day long. I will absolutely take that lineup. Hands down. Hands down, I would take that lineup. So it's just something to keep your eyes on with that. All right, gang. So there's some Cade Tyson news for you. Real quick in passing as we get out the door. News came out on Monday that Dontrez Styles is re-entering the transfer portal after being at Georgetown this past year. And curiously, I'm going to lean in a little bit. I saw that On3 gave him a prediction for NC State. So just do with that what you will. Man, Dontrez, don't go to NC State, buddy. I hate to have to beat you. That would just be really sad and disappointing. But we'll see. Got to do what's best for you. And if that's NC State, I get it. I understand it. All right, gang, thanks so much for joining me on Tuesday's show. Great to be together, talking some Jonas Aidoo and the rest of the bigs, talking Cade Tyson some more, all of that. Great to be together. You love to see it. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community, where we were already talking about all of this all day long, we'd love to have you. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the show on video or audio, do it now. There's no excuse to not. On audio, if that's your preferred platform you like to listen, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to. If you're watching, just hit that subscribe button right down in the corner there on YouTube. Gang, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. I'll be back with you again tomorrow, but until then, peace.